Okay, so it seems it's us, and might as well get going. So today we're going to have a look at just how to use our labels to help us speed up our job, make things easier. You quite often probably hear me or Sam telling you off for using 2D text labels and trying to do things manually. It's not because we want to be mean, it's because we'd rather you spend more time doing design work, because if we go and label everything that we've do manually, it means every time we change something, we have to go back and find it, fix it, and change it. And there's also the risk that on a huge project, we've got so many labels and stuff that we've placed around the place that we have forgotten one and left it there, and everyone thinks that some wall surface is tiles and it should be painted or something like that. So what we're trying to do here is get in a manner of trying to automate a lot of that stuff, so that once the initial act of labeling the object or element has been done, then you don't really have to worry too much about it later on, especially physically checking the text around, because every time you make a change, it will update for you. So I've just taken a little Marley Hornet that we've been working on in Ratamol. It's not the best example, but it's an example I could find easily. So we've got everything's here basically. So we've got our room set up, walls, beds, some materials on the walls, things like that. So it's moving along to doing what we want it to do. Now, if we were to go into the room projections that we need to do, let's see what's here. Okay, so here's an example of something where someone, or who in this case, has come along and made a door, put a fill over the door, over the glass to make it look like something else, and then put a label, which I understand says something like a label over the window, or a sticker over the window. But if later on down the track we go through and she decides that that window becomes clear or blue glass or red glass or whatever, she has to then come back and find this window, remember that it's there, and change it. Because that is just a standard old piece of text that relates to nothing. So what we want to get in the habit of doing is starting to work out how we can smarten up this process of labeling stuff. So whatever you want to label, if you don't know how to do it, there's probably a way of, or someone might know how to do it. So you need to probably start asking around, or better still thinking, and coming up with some solutions and seeing if they will work as well. So what I have done is then go into the engine room and into the options, property manager. So this is where we can really start to make ArchiCAD sing. And from this version or the previous version, we've got these things called property managers, where we can now assign any sort of property we want to an object, or an element. So just say we were specifying furniture, we go to a table, we could specify whatever we want to know at this table. So the type of the top, what the legs are made of, what model this is, who the supplier is, the supplier's website, supplier's phone number, the rep we're dealing with, the price, even a link to the spec sheet online, all sorts of data that would be useful when we go through the project later on and wanting to find stuff out. There's nothing worse than jumping into a project as well and going, what's going on here? And, oh yeah, there's some nice tables, but what are they? Where are they from? How did we come to choose those tables? So then I go through and change them all because I don't know what they are. So basically, if you want to create a property, we just come into here and just click new, and then type away whatever we want to do. So in this instance, maybe we've got, and you can create new groups. So these here are the groups. So you can then group your properties into various groups. So whether some of them applied to, well, you could group them, they say like furniture or surfaces, hardware, all those things that relate to a certain type of thing that we do. So I've got materials here, and I've just gone through and typed these up in some English ones so I can actually understand them. So I've got the finish type, a colour, gloss level, an RAL colour code, manufacturer. Just get rid of all those because I don't need them. We could even go through and just say now we want to choose, say, how we want the surface to be painted, even like if we want to say that it's sprayed or brushed. So we could go create a property for the application, add it to the group materials, okay, I'll call it application method. And then we've got some lists here of options that we can use to ask for the input. So we could either just have a general input, so if it was a manufacturer's name and we weren't limited to any specific manufacturer, say, you could just leave that blank and you could go and type whatever you want in there. An integer, so we'll be looking for a whole number answer. A number, so it's going to be looking for a number, including decimals. Tag, and then an options list or a true-false statement. So I think we might want to have something. Maybe it's a project where stuff's supplied by the owner and some stuff's part of the contract. You could have like just a little true-false, whether it's in the contract or out of the contract. So you could at least show the furniture, say, but you could put a little tag on it to say it's not in the contract. So then you could then turn some graphic overrides on as well later on to show those in a different way, or that they don't show up in schedules, or all sorts of tricky little tricks like that. So just in this one here, we might go for an option setup. So we're going to put here that this is either sprayed or brushed. Okay. And one other little hint for setting up option sets is probably also to have an undecided. So then it's not going to default. It's not going to default to something that it's not. So it makes it again all easier later on. So when you're going through the project and you're trying to find all the walls where we've assigned a paint color to, if you've selected undecided, paint color is not a good option. If we've selected a surface finish for, so if you're undecided, we can put on a graphic override that shows them all as red, so that you know that now I've got to go in and I've got those 10 walls to address in some way or another. So you can leave that there. Undecided. And we go, okay, oh, hold on. And then now I need to tell it where this property is going to apply. So I come into, I don't know if you understand what the classifications are, but there's now some classification system in ArchiCAD, which I'll just go okay on that for a minute, and we'll go just classifications. So the classification manager is a way of sort of trying to sort our data in a meaningful way and try and give us control over it all. So in our instance, we're going to be using generally the Talo 2000 classification set. So every item in a project basically should have a Talo 2000 reference number assigned to it. So basically, if you were looking at interior stuff, we would come down here and choosing some of these. For interior walls, see, we are choosing 1311 value SANET. And by clicking on any of these classifications, I can then tell what properties I've set up that are related to this classification as well. But you probably don't need to get too hung up on the technicalities of how all this works. Just know that they're there and that is something that you should be looking for when you place an item. Over time, we're going to try and make it so that the favorites library will cover everything. It will have all of these sorts of things preset, but it's still handy to know how things work. So we've got the classifications there, and then, so where was I? Up in my little property manager, and I just made our application method. So now I want to assign this to some sort of parts of the building. So I'm going to come in here and say that will apply to internal walls. It would also apply to ceilings. No, is that not? It's that one there, isn't it? And that's wall surfaces there. And I don't know anything else that we could paint. So click OK. And so now that property will always be able to be applied to an element in that has any of these classifications. So whether it's an internal wall, a ceiling finish, or a wall finish. So if I go OK, I didn't do the one for glass. So what we'll do here now is we will create also and we want to create a new property there called we'll call it glass manifestations, isn't it? Just call it manifestations. And we will apply that to it's internal glazing, isn't it? let's adjust this. Okay, and that's some sort of glazing as well, is it?
Special internal walls?
Ah, internal walls, yeah, that's right. Just double check this here. So that classification manager is down here, and so this actually doesn't have anything applied to it yet. So that's a value of it, isn't it? Okay, so now that door has had the right supposedly classification applied to it, and then that brings up down here anything that applies to 1315 value of it classification, and in this instance it's just this manifestations thing. So if I type here, I can so now I want to label this glass here and tell it that it is sticky picture over the window. I then come in and grab a label from the label tool. Let's grab a property label, which is also selected, isn't it? No, that one there on my eye. That one there. And then we can come down here and tell it what we want to say. So we want the property value. And what sort of glass it is, we'll finish. And then fill over the window doesn't help me here. Oh, there you go. So what you need to do then is, once you've got your label set up to go, is select the thing that you're trying to label and then just click on it. And the label will appear. Now, I just want to bring that forward so that it sits over that fill that she's got placed there. So now, if we were to go through this model and end up changing this door to have no labels on it, it automatically disappears. Whereas, because we've done it manually, we then need to go and find it, fix it, and replace it. If we've done that to every door in our room projections, and we've got 500 or 1,000 rooms, you know, it's a lot of going back and finding a label and changing it when no one ever became an architect to do that sort of stuff. So if we go from there, we can also then, say, come back to that other view, like over here. And I've just had a play around here. I've set up some properties for these walls. So I've set up things like a finish type, a colour, gloss level, RAL code, the manufacturer, and the application method that will relate to walls. So now when I do my elevations, whoa. So now when I do my elevations, I can come in here quickly and have these labels turn up. So all I've done there was used, I think it was the same label, and then just added more more information. So you're sort of limited in this instance to just 3. So you're limited to just three options. Generally, what I've seen, that's probably as much as we tend to use sometimes anyway. But if you want more, we can come into here and just use the auto text label, and just come in here and click on the element that we want. So then we can start using this button here, insert auto text, and then we can start grabbing whatever information about the element that we want. So we could start by asking it to list the ID of the wall, say. There's all of this information here which you could choose. From the wall, we could then say...
do you need to go into the classifications one? Because if you're filling in the data there, then it won't be...
Yeah, no, that's that as well. Yeah, I was just showing them that there's extra stuff here. Okay. So you've got, I mean, all this stuff up here is from the project notes side. So that relates more to, say, doing master sheet layouts and stuff, so you can go and find the name of the project and show it up every time and addresses and things like that. But this stuff from here down sort of relates to the elements. So you could then get things like, where did I see it? Height. Maximum height of the wall. And then you come down to classifications, and we don't know classifications. Properties is what we want. We come into our materials. We can choose our finish type, our colour, our velocity, our code, manufacturer. And then come back out here and just then either put a net. And you can't break them in the wrong place because they will tell you where the word is. So you can do things like that, and it doesn't actually have to end up sitting on the wall either. You could just sit it out here. You could create sort of little schedules of those sorts of finishes for all the bits. You could, like, if these walls had different names, so we just called that, rather than its ID being its construction type, you could just call it wall. Then in our schedule, it'll tell us that the wall is, 2.71 meters high. In fact, then you can add normal text. You should be able to. So then you can say in here max height. So you can start using as much of the information that we can put into the model as possible. So that, again, it's like really good here for being able to use that data on our drawings, our elevations, our plans, whatever we need to tell people. Then we can also export that data into schedules, and we can also use it for finding things that haven't been addressed or might be wrong by using our graphic overrides to search for certain things. So once we've got all our rooms and our building modelled up, those same data we could go searching for. Where are we? So we can search for anything that has. So we can go searching on these properties as well. So then we can search for, say, say, all walls with, let's say, paint. And it's found me 2 walls. So I've got 1 wall with paint. So you can then, find things by these little classifications. And also it's all stuff that can be manipulated, like we were talking about last week in the schedules and manipulating data in Excel. This is all stuff that can be done in the back end as well, so you don't have to be going through the project, changing everything item by item, element by element. You can either go into a schedule and whip through the schedule and do it in there, or export that schedule to Excel and then do it probably even quicker in there and then bring it back.
What if you have different types of finish on each side of the wall?
You would have to set up something like a property, say, for side 1 and side 2, or front side, back side, or you should have to think about those sorts of things so we can set them up. But there are all sorts of things that if you're working through a project and you are finding that you're needing to do some stuff manually, think about what it is you're trying to do, so that then you can come to us and we can say, well, let's do this.
If you were trying to calculate the sort of surface area of tiles or something,
Yeah.
and you assigned it to a wall, would it sort of count the surface area of both sides?
I think you would be able to do that by assigning different materials to different sides of the walls, one being tiles, one being whatever. And so then when you're saying calculate the surface area of the wall with this material on it, so it will only calculate that one face.
So would you go in and slice the wall, or how do you add a different material to it?
So you mean a patch of tiles? So you mean a wall that doesn't have tiles all over it, but a wall that has little...
Yes, or to a certain height or something.
Okay, there we would probably use, I would tend to use something like that little object that Bertie made us, which is you can set up for a certain height, and then it runs. We would use the calculator for that. But then the only problem then is you end up with a wall surface
So it's like
plus the tile surface. So you'd have to be able to then export some stuff to Excel and manipulate it from that. I think ArchiCAD 22 might have better, even more powerful ways of manipulating data within ArchiCAD. You can sort of create a lot of, I think, Excel type functions in the scheduling. And the other thing I was going to show you too there was, like I've just used this again just to name like the beds and the bedside table. I've just basically used the ID for the object, so it's sort of something where if you were, specifying, say, chairs, and you were giving the chairs, say, a code by whether they were, type A or type B or C, so that it was easy to distinguish what they were. We could then grab our label tool, and in fact all we need to do is I'll click on one that we know and then come here and click and click. So that's telling us that this chair is a type A, this chair is a type B, and then later on if you decide that, you can then hunt for the type, so you'll have a schedule at the side saying type A are a Peroin in this and type B are a eschew that. You could then change those as well if there was another type, or you wanted to change some of the B's to A's. So you just need to change the chair, and then everything else is done for you. So then you can spend more time getting the design right and not having to worry about all the boring shit.
Is there a way to always have a layer sort of on top of everything here? Your line is sort of going under the bed and under the furniture.
Oh, okay, so you mean just like taking this ceiling panel here and making it so that it runs the
Just
lines run
because
across the bed?
sometimes grid lines and stuff like this sort of disappear behind building, whereas that should always sort of be.
Okay, in that instance, I don't think we've got a grid line here, but if you've got a grid line, first thing I would do is grab my grid line and go edit and bring to the front. That should bring it forward in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Everything. And then
you just have to go and sort of check that there's a way to set it so that it's always like top layer.
No, because sometimes if you place something then over it, it could go over. Another thing is to look for things like this where you've got, this is obviously an object with a white background. So you could, I think, where are we? Finish. So you can turn the background of the objects to transparent as well, so that they're not always sitting over everything. That can be a pain in the butt too. So that's hopefully that's helpful or something. And yeah, what we'd encourage you to try and do is try and start using labels wherever you can on any elements, and just think, like, take the time sometimes to think about what you're actually doing when you're doing it in 2D, and thinking if there's a way that, if you're just repeating something that is information that's in an element or something like that, well, you're actually duplicating work. So when you sort of come across those instances, just maybe stop, think, could I do it a better way? If you can't think of a better way, well then come and ask one of us and we'll try and sort it out.
Does the label, the size change when you change the scale?
So I think it will stay the same. It'll say the same text size that you set. But I think actually in ArchiCAD now, hold on, we might. Burn those ones that I just did in English. Where are we? Text style. No, you sort of set. No, you basically set the text to a size and it stays at that, like 2 millimeters or 1.5 millimeters or whatever it is you set. And one other thing too to remember is to try, if you just grab that object and start doing what I told you before, it will normally look like this. Why is it not changing back? So normally it will default to something like that. So you think, oh, it looks ugly with that line. But to remember just to come into the label geometry and just turn the leader line off. And go, okay. But before turning the leader line off, you should turn the leader distance to 0, because that's how far away from the dot your label will sit, unless for some reason you wanted your text sort of sitting up above, like if you wanted to click on here and it sit 10 mils above the wall or whatever, or above the object, you could do that. But if you just wanted to say sit over the wall where you press it, or just turn the leader to 0. So that should get you going on labels for a bit. No worries. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful.
Thanks.
No worries.